President-elect Biden has confirmed he plans to nominate retired Army General Lloyd Austin as Secretary of Defense. Austin is a retired four-star Army general. He's also the former head of U.S. Central Command and military forces in Iraq. If confirmed, he would be the first black man to lead the Pentagon. His confirmation would require Congress to waive a law requiring military officers to wait 7 years before serving as Defense Secretary. For more on this, I want to bring in retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt. He's also a former Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Middle East Affairs. Welcome, General. Thanks very much for being with us. What's your reaction to the news that President-elect Biden plans to nominate General Austin as Defense Secretary?
Well, I was surprised. I've known Lloyd Austin for many, many years. He's a great war fighter, had a brilliant record in the Second Gulf War. But he doesn't seem to have the political background that one would expect from somebody that's going to be leading the Defense Department inside the Pentagon, inside of the executive branch of the government.
Why is that necessary, General?
Well, I think it's the notion of civil control of the military, civilian control. We want somebody who is able to tell the military specifically what the president's guidance is. But when you have a military officer, in effect, leading other military officers, you have a bit of a strained relationship there. And also the fact that you want to have somebody who has spent some time around the Beltway, who really understands how the processes work, know when it's good to push back on the president, when it's bad to push back on the president. And while he's had some experience with the executive branch out in the field, he's had very little experience inside of Washington, D.C.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit more. Like James Mattis, who served as President Trump's first Pentagon chief, Austin's confirmation, as we said, would require that congressional waiver to exempt him from federal law requiring military officers to wait 7 years before serving as Defense Secretary. Now, in 2017, Democratic Senator Jack Reed said, quote, waiving the law should happen no more than once in a generation. Do you think that that's a potential issue going forward?
I really don't. There are other issues surrounding the confirmation. Where will we go inside of Iraq? Where will we go inside of Afghanistan? What's going to be the policy for the military with regards to a reduced defense budget? All of those are far more important than whether somebody's been out of the military for 4 years or somebody's been out for 7 years. So I don't think that will come up. It may come up in terms of some of the discussions, but I don't think it's going to hold him up from confirmation.
I understand, General, you have spent some time in Iraq lately. What are you doing there? And from your experience there, what can you tell us about the troop withdrawal on the ground?
Well, I do private business over there trying to help out the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Defense. The troop reductions, in my mind, is not making a difference on the ground. The important thing is that we can provide the Iraqis air support, intelligence, logistic support. And frankly, that can be done from outside of Kuwait, outside of the United Arab Emirates, outside of Iraq, and many, many other countries. As long as we can fly the planes, as long as we can deliver the intelligence, it really doesn't matter if we have, as we say, boots on the ground or in a neighboring country.
I want to turn to another topic. Our CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell spoke with Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy in an exclusive interview. It follows a CBS News investigation into sexual assault and rape in the U.S. military. Now, McCarthy admitted that the Army failed to keep its soldiers safe, particularly from sexual harassment and assault. Let's go ahead and listen to some of that.
So you ordered this review?
Yes.
In part because of what happened to Vanessa Guillen?
In part, yes. I wanted a fresh pair of eyes to help us understand the problem and fix it.
What surprised you?
Just the scale and the concern about retaliation, the high numbers of individuals that were concerned about reporting because in fear of retaliation from someone in an echelon above them.
People don't feel like it's safe.
The individuals, those in particular, yes.
Now, more of Norah's interview airs tonight on the CBS Evening News, but today McCarthy announced 14 firings and suspensions at Fort Hood following an investigation into Vanessa Guillen's murder there earlier this year. What's your reaction to that, General, and do you think more needs to be done to address this issue in the military?
Well, if you saw me smile when you mentioned his name, I've known young McCarthy since he was a young lieutenant in the United States Army, and I'm glad to see him as Army Secretary because he is taking the appropriate and the tough actions that are necessary to send a message throughout the U.S. Army that we need to step up our game, that type of conduct that we saw and that kind of leadership we saw among those 14 who are either getting significant penalties or being thrown out of the military is the appropriate response to such heinous situations as we saw at Fort Hood. So I'm glad to see Ryan's doing it. I'm glad to see he's not intimidated by officers that are far superior to the rank he had when he was in the military, and it's the right thing to do.
Finally, on the Defense Authorization Act, the Freedom Caucus is planning to vote against it and back President Trump's decision to veto it. What are your thoughts on that, General?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's the Freedom Caucus or anyone else. It's really President Trump that's making the decision. And my comments are there may be legitimate concerns about Section 230. There may be some legitimate concerns about other things that the president is objecting to. But the Defense Authorization Bill is not the place to put those types of issues in. We want to take care of our troops. We want to conduct operations. We want to continue to develop the military. And having these kind of issues with regards to communications acts and where Facebook and Google fit in the overall infrastructure of social media, those are important issues, but they're not appropriate to be putting inside the Defense Authorization Act. We need to take care of our soldiers, not take care of issues with Facebook and Google.
All right, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt. General Kimmitt, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.